In the session 1, we talked about how we can redefine who realtors are and what we do. And maybe if people knew what we did, we wouldn't have been in such a pinch with essential status, right? Because the things that y'all do are not necessarily in somebody's face like this all the time. Oh, some of you are, but not all of you. And if people understood that as realtors, our job is to be the professional problem solver, to do what I was doing right before I got on this webinar, where I'm working through a repair negotiation between a buyer and a seller, and we're doing it all by Zoom because that's an efficient way to operate, to keep the buyer and keep the seller and keep the other agent, because that's what we do. It's just numbers. We figure it out. We make people happy and satisfied and move them along. And then we had our second session where I stomped on your toes a little bit about being organized, getting a schedule in place for your social content so that you can explain better across platforms and in different content areas who you are as a realtor and also who you are as a human, to help broaden your appeal to people and create more of that pull, which creates conversation. And as we know, conversation creates relationships, and relationships turn into business. And then we talked about your systems for your business. We workshopped a price adjustment list and made you hopefully take some steps towards getting yourself more organized, just like a good small business does, because each of you is a micro business in the community. So we add all of those things up. Let's talk about how we can hashtag be the future. Because prior to the pandemic, I would say that outside of complaints about lack of inventory, the number one fear and concern of realtors is this going to be a job for long? Will I be disintermediated? Will apps take over? Will hedge funds take over? Zillow has iBuyer. Is there even a job for me in the future? And a lot of fear. AI, AR. I mean, there's just so many different things out there that would make you think you didn't have a job. And so, of course, the pandemic came in and brought a different kind of fear. So it pushed that fear out of the way for a second. But now that we're coming to a place where people are starting to at least see that there is another side, but don't go into a Staten Island grocery store without a mask on. Did y'all see that video? That mob attacked that woman without wearing a mask? It was crazy. So just a reminder, be kind and gracious and thoughtful as we come to the other side, no matter how you feel about your fear levels. Remember, kindness, graciousness, right? All of us. And so as we come to the other side, how do we as realtors have a job? Well, let's talk about how we can have a job. And it starts with this. And for full disclosure, I made the slides. So I got to pick the eye candy. So if that's not your eye candy, just close your eyes and envision whichever version of eye candy you would like. But I want to tell you what I see with that image there. What I see is not just a man with muscles. For him to get there, he had to have a couple of things in place. The first thing he had to have in place was a goal. To get to that kind of fitness, you have to decide you want it. And you have to decide what you want it to look like. And so he sets this goal, and I would imagine that at some point he was a normal looking person. And so he said, well, I want to get over here. And it's a long way, right? From here to there. He also has to have discipline, because I will tell you that to achieve goals like that, you have to do things nobody else will do. He had to get up in the morning when he didn't want to and go do his exercises. He had to get up when he was sore and when he was tired and when he was hungover and when his best friend or spotter said, I don't want to go. And when he woke up in the morning and said, I don't want to do this, he did it anyway. Because you're never going to hit a goal that's this far away if you're not willing to do really, really uncomfortable and hard things, which means that as he's doing workouts, he's probably doing really hard things that would make him question, what in the heck have I told myself I'm going to do? Then he had to make a second set of goals. And so when you're thinking about that discipline piece, it's also got discipline outside of the actual weightlifting. He probably chose not to eat the things that I choose to eat, like brownies and candy and homemade ice cream yesterday, because I love sugar and I love sweets. And so if I'm not willing to make the sacrifices that he's been willing to make, then I know I'm not going to hit that goal. And friends, that's okay. All I'm going to say is that if your goal is out here and you want to get there, you've got to A, set the goal, and B, find the discipline to do the hard things to get there. And that goal out here, For you, that might be $5 million in sales. So let me be the first one to tell you that if your goals don't look like that, if your goal doesn't look like 100 million in sales and a team of 5,000 people, doesn't have to. Your goals are your goals, but you have to set something. If we're going to be the future, we have to decide that we intend to be part of the future. This can't be a, well, I'll do real estate until there's no more real estate to do. I'll do a deal until there's no more deals to do. No, 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 no. If you want to be a realtor 10 and 20 years from now because you see the value that you provide, you see what you do for people when you are confident and you are their educator and you are guiding them by being their advocate, and you say, I want to be this realtor 10 years down the road, fantastic. How do we get you there? You're not going to get there selling one house. You're not going to get there laying on your couch and being Homer Simpson. Because I'm going to tell y'all, I've got kind of a stark comparison here, but I really think it's actually been proven in realtor stats. And it's really striking. So you want to know this? We have 1.4 million realtors nationally. Last year, 2019, 65% of the membership sold between 0 and 1 houses. Between 0 and 1. Which means you either sold 0 or you sold 1, because half a deal is really you just glomming off of somebody else, really. So over half of our membership is not making a living in real estate. And I know that some members are assistants and some members are paralegals and they're not trying to make a living in this business, but it still shows you that the real estate that's done in this country is done by the top third. They do all of it. All right, so what that means is if you want to be in that top third doing the business and making a living out of this and serving your community through real estate, you have to make the hard choices. And the hard choices mean working when you don't want to work. And it means being ethical when it's easy to be in the gray area to get paid. And telling somebody, no, you probably shouldn't sell right now, or telling somebody, yes, you should buy right now. Those are hard choices to make, but you start adding up all those things and you get the goal you started out to get. The interesting thing about Homer is he has a goal too, because friends, not setting a goal is a goal, and you're going to have an outcome if you don't have anything in mind and you're just wandering around. And yes, he's likable and he's affable, but Homer's life is less than mediocre. I think if you've logged into this webinar today, and if you've been with us in this series and you're out there chasing designations and doing good volunteer work in your community, my wager is that you're not Homer. You're not the one out there looking for the easy paycheck. You're not trying to skate through. You've got something in mind that says, I'm determined to go over here. And y'all, I'll tell you, your business looks like that. I want you to think about that client you have. You went to their house to list it. You've known them for your whole life. You grew up together. You took your little professional presentation, had your little book, had all your little comps, sat down at the table, went through, and you said, now, do y'all have any questions? And they said, we're good. What do you want us to sign? And you're like, well, I need to know if you have any questions. And like, we were going to list with you anyway. You're the only realtor we have. And you're like, I know, but I want to make sure you're getting a great presentation. And they picked you not because of this. They picked you because of this and because of the relationship. The best realtors, the ones who survive the longest, the ones who do a lot of this business, they've learned a long time ago that if you build the relationship, then later on you get to make an ask. It's not ask before relationship, it's relationship and then ask. And we all know realtors who occasionally put it out of order and you make an ask first, and then it's weird, right? It's hard to get back to the depth of a relationship that's really going to matter in the long term. But that relationship takes the discipline, and it takes the hard work, and it takes the phone calls, and it takes the uncomfortable conversations. And that's what makes you amazing. And I want you to think about RPAC in this way too, because it's kind of interesting. And in our world, whenever I start saying the word RPAC, there's a whole bunch of members that are like, oh God, please, no, stop. I hate politics. I hate money. I want you to think about this differently, because yes, this is our political advocacy work. First of all, the R is not for Republican, it's for realtors. I always have to dispel that. We will always have members who think that means Republican. It does not. We're like the only PAC out there that's nonpartisan. We're the only one I know of that says, I don't care which party you are. How'd you vote? Here's our 4 issues. Boom, 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 boom. We're going to grade you based on how you listen to Realtor members, because Realtor members are all over the spectrum. But you got to know this about our political work. Y'all, the PAC is 51 years old. 51 years. If you want to know why we had help in Washington, D.C. for realtors during this pandemic, I'll just tell you. It's 51 years of this. It's 51 years of you making your fair share contribution, whether you are a $15 contributor or a $99 contributor or a $10,000 contributor. Whoever is contributing has been building the relationship for these 51 years. I'm a 20-year realtor. I know that wearing this pin is not just my dedication for 20 years. This is a nod to the realtors who have been doing this for 31 years before I even got into real estate. And this is also my nod to the realtors of the future who would like to have real estate as a job option and would like to have property ownership as an option in their financial futures too. 51 years of building relationships so we can make an ask. I mean, it's huge if you really think about it. And you want to think about it too in this way. There's people out there that when they go to Washington, D.C. during a time like this to make an ask, it's a very limited, specific ask just for their special interest, right? The Kennedy Center is a good example, right? They do beautiful music. It's a really cool place to go. They got in that CARES Act and got $25 million and promptly did what after they got their money? Laid off all the musicians and all the staff. And so it leaves people saying, the heck was that for? Contrast that with the realtors. We went to the table, said we need to get help for independent contractors. They've never had help before. They don't usually get unemployment. They need help. Boom. There comes that $600 a week, which has kept a lot of realtors in their houses and fed their families. And we got help through the Small Business Administration and the Payroll Protection Program for brokerages and for realtors who are tiny, tiny micro businesses. And you know why it's amazing? Why I think we should be super duper proud of ourselves? When we went to the table, we didn't make that ask for realtors. We made that ask for all independent contractors, for all small businesses across this country. We as realtors never look at just ourselves as a goal. We say, how do we help our communities on the whole? And love that about us. We're amazing, y'all. Do you realize that? Everybody else that's made an ask is looking out for their specific interest, and the realtors go to the table and say, how about all y'all? We are inclusive in our ask, and it's good for our communities. I am so proud of us because we are the only PAC that I think really does look out for the broad-based community. And the reason I call it a member benefit, you get to invest in this PAC. You don't have to, you get to. You probably have insurance agents that would like to invest in it right now because they were helped by our work, but it's a member benefit. And if you're not investing in it, you're giving up one of the best opportunities you have to showcase what makes us different. Zillow wasn't at the table getting help for independent contractors and small businesses, y'all. Zillow's goal is the bottom line for their shareholders. They don't go to bat with elected officials, but realtors do because we're neighbors. And we're community members, and we're mortgage holders, and we're parents, and we're ball coaches, and we're book club friends, and we're realtors too. We are always going to be the voice of the public because there is no National Association of Homeowners. There's just us. We're the ones that stand in the gap. And it's high time we started to explain that to people. So you've got to be part of the story. Our neighbors need to know that the realtors made an ask for them too. This is huge if you really think about it, because as realtors, we're known for being a bunch of blood-sucking, money-grubbing commission people. You dress up and drive around and you don't do anything, and they just don't think highly of us. So what if we change that narrative? You change it by explaining what you do as a realtor and how you help people, and then we start to explain to the public what makes us different. You have to spread this word. This is not the job of the association or of your brokerage or of NAR. This is your job, neighbor by neighbor and appointment by appointment. And let me tell you how I look at spreading this word. So this pin that I wear right here, this is my major investor pin for the PAC. Now, I'm a 20-year realtor. I didn't start investing until 2009 because I didn't know what the PAC was and what it did. Then I got a call from a phone bank that said, hey, Lee Brown, give us $99 for the PAC. And I said, why? And they said, cause you ought to. And unfortunately for many of y'all, that's how you got started investing. You're like, all right, I can do $99. I don't know what that was, but all right. And then after I got involved and I found out what government affairs did and how critical we are to educating elected officials so they will understand what we do, man, you can't unlearn that stuff. And so that's when I dug in. I invest at the highest levels now because this business has given me the highest levels of success I could not have achieved anywhere else. Or maybe I could have, but it wouldn't be nearly as pleasurable because realtors are awesome. So I'll tell you, I wear this pin all the time. A lot of realtors just wear it to realtor meetings where they can peacock with it on. Hi, I'm a golden R, da, da, da. Well, see, the thing about this is it's not for you to peacock around. It's for you to know what it means. And so I wear it all the time. And I will find people on flights and in, well, actually my mosquito guy asked me what it was the other day because I wear it at home, even if I'm in a t-shirt. Y'all have seen on some of my videos, I always wear my pearls, wear my major investor pin 99% of the time. And the guy who sprays my yard with these organic oils or whatever the stuff is that makes the mosquitoes go away, but doesn't hurt the bees. He had to make sure it didn't hurt the bees. And so he's out there spraying my yard. And he said, what's that pin you have on? Is that a service pin? Because in a lot of professions, people know what service pins are, you know, your years in the business or whatever. And I said, no, it's an investment pin. He said, what are you investing in? I said, I've been investing in you. I've invested in you before I ever met you. He said, what are you talking about? I said, not everybody knows that realtors do political work. Now, y'all know that I do political work because I'm real loud about it. He knew I'd run for office and all that stuff. I said, but the realtors on the whole, we educate people about property rights and small business because we know that that's critical to the future of our economy. I write checks for that. He was like, dang, that's cool. It is cool, isn't it? We just never told anybody. But I'll tell you where it has a real big impact. It's in your buyer and listing appointments. So I'm gonna give y'all a little secret for logging into the webinar today. Lucky you. I'm gonna tell you how to win more listings by becoming a major investor with RPAC, because you didn't know this would help you at all. When I'm on a listing appointment, like many of you, I'm in a competitive situation most of the time anymore because people listen to Dave Ramsey and they heard they got to interview 3 realtors. And then I have to explain to them why credit is good and not everything he says is perfect, although some things are. Nobody's 100% right, I mean, except for me. But anyway, so I take my little appointment and I go through everything, hour and a half, give them the whole kit and caboodle. You get to the end. Do you have any questions? And the seller says to you, so why should I pick you? Don't you love that? Love that question? And so as realtors, we're like, I just spent an hour and a half telling you, but all right. And that's when you tend to go into your spiel of, well, it's because I'll get you the most money in the shortest amount of time with the fewest hassles, which is the realtor trifecta of lies. And so instead of using the realtor trifecta of lies, try this. Well, I'll tell you something. This right here, you see this? And this is really good over Zoom, by the way. It's also good at the kitchen table, but Zoom makes your pins shine a lot more. This is my most expensive piece of jewelry. And I didn't buy it with a one-time purchase. This is year after year after year after year of investing in real estate. And by investing in real estate, I mean investing in your rights to buy the house we're talking about you buying, or your rights to sell the house we're talking about. This pin tells you that I write checks, and I also make visits to elected officials here in this county, at the state level, and at the national level. And I do that to educate them so that you will be able to buy and sell properties, and so will your kids, and so will your grandkids. So make sure that as you're interviewing realtors, you ask the other realtors if they too are engaged in protecting your rights to buy and sell property, and they're not just interested in one more sale. I get a lot of business that way, y'all. But I tell you the best thing I got out of that presentation, I've been doing this now for a couple of years, because as you know, nobody's perfect in real estate. You keep learning little tweaks to your craft and you keep making yourself better. Well, in my market, we have 11,000 members of the MLS, which means everybody's a realtor. And I'm always up against the same 2 ladies. And it's just for whatever reason, we are top producers. We know a lot of the same people. We're in competitive situations all the time. Well, they found out I was doing this, which means they had a spy in one of the listing appointments. And so Realtor B called me and she said, Lee, how do I get one of them pins that you wear? And I said, $1,000. And she said, done. And so she invested $1,000, boom, Sterling R. Well, then Realtor C heard about it and she called me and said, Lee Brown, how much did Realtor B invest to get that pin? And I said, 1,000. She said, then I'll do 1,050. It was like the best day ever, because it was classic realtor competition coming to play. But you know what now happens, y'all? In my market, when somebody interviews me as their realtor, if they interview one of those 2, they're hearing about our advocacy efforts 3 times. That's awesome. It's awesome when your competitors want to one up what you're doing and it's something that's beneficial to all of us. How amazing. It means I have to up my game in another way now, because now my primary competitors are also major investors telling the story. And I can only see this as a massive, massive positive for the profession. Think about it, y'all. Now every consumer we talk to says, this is what realtors do. They look at realtors in a different light. And when they look at you in a different light, you know what they don't do? They don't have to go to this and ask an app a question anymore. They just text you and say, answer me this. What do I need to do about this? That's where we have a future, being indispensable in a multifaceted way. And I'll tell you that I've had very little patience in the past for the realtors who argue with me about the PAC. I have tons of patience for the ones who didn't know and they're looking to get educated and they don't want to invest before they're educated, because I love people who ask questions. But the people who know what we do and still argue because we didn't support their candidate or their pet project or whatever it is, y'all, this time around, look at what the PAC has done. NYSAR, I mean, Mike Kelly has worked an unending amount of time trying to get carve out so that y'all could get on the phone and talk to clients. I mean, there's been so much work that's been done to educate elected officials. Every member of your realtor association should be investing, because the help that came for independent contractors, it's primarily helped our most vulnerable members who are the least likely to have invested, which means those of you that do invest have actually been looking out for the ones who maybe don't have the ability today, but hopefully they will tomorrow because of the work that you've done. And I'll tell you, in an increasingly divided environment politically, it's going to be more and more important to have realtors who say, we're not going to fight on the fringes. We're going to come to the middle and find solutions, because we're amazing in that way. And this is when we get to really showcase it. And I've said it before, and we'll keep saying it. This is our time. Nobody else is in the real estate space in your market except for you, the realtors. Maybe a few opinion people and talking heads online, they don't count, because you do real estate. And your clients are calling you right now. Should we sell? Should we buy? When should we do something? What can we do? What's going on? They're calling you because you are a professional problem solver, and you are their neighbor, and you are trusted. And so now is when we have to make sure that message gets really good, deep, well explained, and that we take our prominent space back as the voice of real estate. We matter to our neighbors in a way that they could never matter to Zillow, because we look at this as a two-way street. And so if you ever want to know what the realtors are doing politically, you say, well, what is happening outside of coronavirus? What else do realtors do? You can always get your federal updates from realtorparty.realtor. You can also go to the New York Association and see what NYSAR is doing in Albany. You can go to your local association website and find out when the interviews are happening for local candidates. This is something many associations do. Who's running for city council will send out a questionnaire to all 5 of them and interview them, and 3 will respond and 2 won't, which tells you a lot about the 2 that don't respond. But frankly, this is where as realtors, you can be the most educated consumer in your community of the people who are elected to serve us. We are not electing people for us to serve. We need to get that turned back around a little bit. And so when you think about this, you may wonder what we're doing right this minute. I can remind you that while coronavirus has eaten up all the oxygen in the room, there is a clock ticking on flood insurance. Again, it happens every year. It's the perennial realtor issue. But you know, the beauty of realtors, we are good at multitasking, and we are used to having 87 balls in the air at the time. So while everybody else in the public may have forgotten that the flood insurance clock is ticking, the realtors have not. And we are pursuing this with our elected officials to make sure that they know they need to get an extension plan in place, and we still are pushing for reform to make that program more viable in the long term. We're also working on Fannie and Freddie, the GSEs, your government sanctioned entities. Those have been in reform talks for a little while now. It's still happening. The realtors are in the middle of that too. So we don't stop advocating for different issues just because we're busy, because we're realtors. I don't think anybody else is nearly as good at multitasking as realtors are. And since we're good at multitasking, let's do a better job for our communities. And so I want you to think about fair housing differently. Now, of course, April is Fair Housing Month. I think Fair Housing Month should pretty much be every day, but you know, it's just me. So if you want a flyer like this is a great thing to include in your marketing presentations to help your buyers and sellers know that a good and dedicated realtor is going to serve anybody who wants help in any way that we can. No, we can't help everybody, and some people don't want help, but that doesn't mean your doors are ever closed, right? So this particular graphic is available at realtorparty.realtor. But what I want you to think about a little bit differently with fair housing is this. If you didn't read it, please go read that very uncomfortable report from the Long Island Association. That was the 3-year expose that uncovered a whole bunch of realtors doing things really, really badly, really, really violating fair housing in CE classes and with clients, and it was pretty dreadful to read. I'll just say this though, I really don't believe all of the violators were bad people. I think a lot of them have bad biases and they had some bad training, but hopefully a lot of them are coming around to see how they can be better at serving their communities and better humans. I will always believe that there are good people who don't know any better and they can be educated to learn how to be a better version of themselves. Because I know I'm a better person now than I was 20 years ago, and I hope all of you are as well. So I would just caution you that as realtors, we don't assume that all the realtors who violated are evil. I'm just going to hope they're all better, and hopefully y'all can agree with me on that. So do read that report. It's pretty striking. But when we talk about fair housing, we often start thinking it's just race or gender or ethnicity. We go into our little identity politics silos pretty quickly and forget that fair housing is actually broader than that. And so when you think about it, it's part of the reason I hate the word diversity, because diversity to me says one of each and all the people and what we look like and stuff, and then we're all in our own little buckets. I'm the person who likes the word inclusion, because inclusion just means my circle's big enough for all y'all. And if you didn't know, all y'all in Southern terms, the definition is that's y'all plus 3. And so if you want to get the big group, it's all y'all. My circle's big enough. And for realtors, almost every realtor that I know, their circle's big enough. There's room. So if we're going to do fair housing correctly, I want you to think about it in terms of how this flyer lays it out. Fair housing is trying to create thriving communities. Now, you can't show me a soul on the planet, if you ask them to their face, do you want to live in a thriving community? That they would say, no, I do not. I want to live in a dead place with no hope. No, everybody wants to live in a thriving community. Now, what does thriving mean? Here's your 5 bullet points. And here's what I want you to think a little bit differently. The first one, a strong economy is in a thriving community, right? Now, you probably know towns near you that have died. I know my husband is from Jamestown, New York, and when we have been up there, he's always kind of heartbroken when you go through like Fredonia and some of those other areas where it's died out, right? You see small towns have been hurt, and it's because the jobs left, right? And so for a strong economy, when I'm explaining this to elected officials, I do it this way, because what I'll explain to you is a lot of our elected officials are actually very smart, but they're overwhelmed with issues and with people talking at them. A little visual goes a long way. And so this is what I explain. I'm like, here's what we're working for. This is jobs and this is rooftops. So if you want a rooftop, you have to have jobs and you have to have rooftops. If we don't have rooftops, we ain't got jobs. And if we ain't got jobs, we ain't got rooftops. It collapses. Rooftops equal jobs and jobs equal rooftops. And every politician, y'all, they want new jobs in a community because jobs make them look good. Well, if they're blocking development and they're blocking houses and they're all NIMBYism, they ain't gonna get any new jobs, right? And so this is how you help explain it to them. And by the way, this is where you can see another one of the impacts of our advocacy work. Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina he's a friend of mine, full disclosure, but he's freaking brilliant. Tim is the guy that came up with opportunity zones. It's one of the coolest things to come out of any kind of regulatory work in years. And it was part of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And if you're not familiar with opportunity zones, essentially it's almost 8,000 census tracts in the country that are deemed to be fragile or threatened, meaning they are way below levels on jobs, employment, their poverty levels are high. It's rough there, right? They're not thriving. And what Tim said is, if you want to get those areas to come back, you have to get investment to come in. And by investment, we don't mean somebody brings in a fast food restaurant and leaves. because a lot of these areas that are not thriving, they have deserts for food and grocery and healthcare and retail, and they need to get everything to come back because you need rooftops and retail and jobs, and they're all interconnected. And so opportunity zones gives a giant tax benefit for capital infrastructure to come in. And so when capital investment comes in to bring in jobs and bring in building and rooftops and opportunities for retail and grocery and service, then it elevates everything in an area. And capital right now, without a tax incentive, is going to flow to easy areas, suburbs, and cities. Now, is that going to change after the pandemic? It's highly likely that we're going to see a resurgence of the suburbs and the exurbs as some of the dense urban markets start to ease out a little bit and people don't want to be so close together. So we probably will see some shifts, but that wouldn't necessarily bring back a community that's been hammered. I love this. And why do we get credit for that? Well, Tim is a realtor champion. His business partner is Michael Sally, who's a realtor in Charleston, South Carolina. And Michael keeps Tim abreast of realtor issues, and Tim advocates for our legislation. And I love that we backed legislation to say, hey, capital investment, go to the areas where nobody's wanted to invest and let's bring our neighbors back. Because what happens is when you bring our areas back and the neighborhood starts to do better, people are healthier. And if you ever wanted to know this is absolutely true. Housing is healthcare. And what do I mean by housing is healthcare? Well, okay, get this. This is a stat that's going to blow your mind. Y'all ready? I'm on the board for the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. Every state has one. We are a self-supporting public agency that works with low-income housing to make sure that there's opportunities for people who are in our vulnerable population. They're making less than $15,000 a year. So 1.5, less than 15 a year, which is a lot of senior citizens, disabled vets. It's a lot of people who are just, they're off the radar, right? And so this agency works to make sure there's housing opportunities for those folks. Well, we don't want government housing. That's really never been a solution that's worked for anybody because they tend to build ugly Soviet-style block things. That doesn't work. Private, I think, would do it, but labor costs are high, materials costs are high, and they can't afford to build it and then rent it out below market without some kind of assistance. And so our housing finance agency builds public-private partnerships using things like tax credits so that private developers can build great communities that, frankly, I could take any of y'all to our communities in North Carolina where we're building. You wouldn't be able to tell which one had Section 8 tenants in it and which one had full price tenants in it, because we're building beautiful places that make people feel valuable, which changes how they take care of communities, right? So anyway, why do I say housing is healthcare? Well, get this. For every dollar spent on, or not spent, but every dollar credited for low-income housing tax credits, every $1, it reduces the state's Medicaid burden by $3. A 3-to-1 return, reducing your Medicaid burden, because when people live in good places where the roof isn't leaky and the windows aren't busted and the air and the heat work and there's not fungal growth, shocking, they're healthier. Yeah. And so if our elected officials would understand that what we are doing, sometimes we don't even get paid for it, right? So I'm not paid to work on the Housing Finance Agency, but I know that in every community, if your workforce housing has better places to live, they're going to be able to get jobs if they want them, or be helped out, people who need help, because that's good. Oh, that's good. That's what fair housing looks like. Fair housing says, we're realtors. We can't even make money on everybody, but we want our communities holistically to be better. We also know that when people are taking it, they're in a place they like and they take care of it, it's going to be cleaner. And also the newer developments that are coming in tend to have more environmentally friendly items in it, you know, no more lead-based paint, asbestos, aluminum wiring, which is better for the long term. And it's been proven over and over and over. The kids who live in stable, better housing do better in school. Homeless kids get transferred all the time because they don't know where home is going to be. If we as realtors focus on providing better housing opportunities in our communities, kids do better. And when kids do better, they're less likely to have teenage pregnancy and drug issues, and they're more likely to take a step up the ladder from their parents, which is the American dream. And we know that when people live in a place they like, they don't put up with a lot of criminal activity and they take care of it. That's what fair housing looks like. It says, doesn't every community deserve to have a chance to thrive? And we do. So I'm going to challenge y'all a little bit on something here. I like to talk about stats. I love looking at the numbers of what housing does, because sometimes that's what tells the story more effectively than we can with, oh, 2 bedrooms, 2.5 bath, cute house. So many of y'all have had a phone call from a buyer in the past that went something like this. Hey, Laura, I got your name from Jane, and um, I, I mean, I was thinking that I want to buy a house, and I don't know how. You've had that phone call, right? The person who you could tell it had taken every bit of nerve she had to call you, and she called you. And Laura says, "Oh, sure, no problem. We'll talk to my lender and see what the scoop is. So I'm going to have Bob call you." So Bob called. And Bob calls her and talks to her and calls you back and says, "Laura, girl, she ain't buying, not now, not ever. That's a 510 credit score. We're just, you're done." Okay. We've all been through that. What do most realtors do at that point? You find out she's a 510, Bob says she ain't buying, right? You never call them back because you're busy and you know you can't help her. And in your head, you're thinking, she's never going to get there. What's the point? I got to go help somebody I can help. Okay. I know that you're busy, and I know that you can't force everybody to get ready to buy. Okay. So just understand, I know that not 100% of people buy houses, but when it took every bit of courage she had to call and she finds out she can't, what do most people do at that point? They give up. We don't have a society of resiliency right now. We have a society that says, screw it. I'll just, whatever. They don't, whatever. It's not fair. System's out to get me. It's not fair. As a realtor, if you believe in fair housing, and if you believe that housing is healthcare, and you believe that this is the future for people, you're going to say to yourself, I need to open doors when I get that phone call. I need to show a pathway. Because y'all, we can show a pathway. It's up to this buyer to get herself down the pathway. Yes. But how much has your life been changed when you've encountered an encourager? Somebody who said, you can do this. It's going to be hard. It's going to suck. It's going to take some discipline, but you can do it. Does that change things for you? Do you think that my muscle man in slide 1 had somebody behind him saying, come on, come on, come on. One more rep, one more, one more, one more. And he did one more. And if that person wasn't there, he wouldn't have. I know that your time is limited, and I know that you're exhausted, but how much would it hurt us to put on our little Google calendars on our little tiny phones here every 6 months, put her name and phone number and check in, call her and say, hey, just checking on you. Need anything? You know, I'm here if you need anything. We're good. If you want to talk about your steps, whatever. But I just wanted to let you know I'm here whenever you need me. Do you realize you might be that one moment that tells her you can make this? It's a long road from 510 to 640, but she could do that if she chose to. And if you believed in her, y'all, sometimes as realtors, we have to be the ones who believe in somebody else. And I'm going to tell you the reason I'm on this with y'all right now. So we know we're not in a society of resiliency. We know that she might give up. So consider this stat. Lawrence Yun, who is our Dr. Lawrence Yun, our chief economist for the National Association of Realtors. I think we all love listening to Lawrence. He's so optimistic and he always has great information. But he gave a stat last year that burned itself into my brain. And I want you to know this stat because it will tell you how important you are. At the age of 65, a retiree who has rented for their whole life, they're eligible to retire, has accumulated between $5,000 and $7,000 in savings. That's it. So what do? Right? You can't stop working because you're only 65. You've probably got 20 years left. So they keep working at their job, or they go to Walmart and greet, or they drive the shuttle for the car dealership, or become realtors. They do something else because rents do this over time. They continue to escalate, and it won't stop just because you're retired. The alternate scenario is the 65-year-old who's now eligible to retire, who owns their own home, has an average of $200,000 in savings, right? And we all know that's not any kind of wealth. You're not going to retire off of that. It's probably in their primary residence, so it's illiquid. But you know what? The house is either paid off or it's close to it, and their payment looks like this. It's stable and fixed. and it's probably from a few years ago, so they can handle it because it's gone up over time. And they've got equity. So if there's a medical emergency, they've probably got the ability to do a HELOC, or their daughter needs to move back home. They can allow it because it's their house, and she's got a grandpuppy who needs to come home, and the grandpuppy can come because it's their house. And they can choose to keep working, or they can choose to find alternate things to do, because one of them got into the home ownership path and one of them did not. And so my question to you is that when somebody calls you, when anybody calls you, are you giving them the chance to have the more stable future, or are you blowing them off because it's too hard? We can't blow off the too hard things, y'all. Not if our goal as realtors is thriving communities. I'm just as guilty as you for not following up with every single buyer who's called me with bad credit and no hope of buying. I'm as bad as you are, but if I'm going to do better, you've got to do better too. Y'all, our communities count on us. I'll tell you this, you talk about being the future. It's only realtors that would ever take somebody and encourage them to get across the finish line. There's no app on the world that can do what you can do as a human being who heard her voice, heard her hesitation, and said, it's going to be 3 years, but I can get you there. Think about it. 3 years, you call her every 6 months. That's 6 phone calls. Can we do that? I think we can. It also means that if you're going to be a lender on my preferred list, you're going to give the steps to success to every single buyer I talk to. And if you can't guide them and give them some solutions and counseling, you are not on my preferred list. So with that being said, now that I've beat y'all up and fussed at you and made you feel really guilty for all the people you haven't talked to, let's think about what you've done for accountability. So if you've hosted a Zoom call, I hope you're going to keep hosting Zoom calls, because I think Zoom is going to be with us for the future. We're not even going to call it video conferencing. We're always going to call it that we're Zooming people, and they've just become the ubiquitous phrase. And I hope that you've learned to embrace being on video and being on camera and connecting to buyers and sellers this way, as well as connecting with your friends and family this way, because it's going to continue. But if we're going to make it really work, you got to combine it with this, with the part of your phone that has a keypad on it. And when you dial the number and you hit green, it goes out. And then when they answer, you're hearing their voice. Did y'all know your phones would do that? I know, crazy, right? So you're going to talk to them, say, hey, look at her. Don't y'all want to talk to her? Because look, what's on her face? No makeup. She washed it, though. You can tell by her pretty glow. She's got a smile on her face. Y'all, you got to make phone calls. And there's no substitute for this. Text is not a substitute. Facebook's not a substitute. The only substitute for phone calls is face-to-face. And for some of y'all, that's going to be mask to mask for a while. And for some of you who are ready to get out in public, you might have faces, and some of you are not ready and you won't. And both ways are okay, because remember, we're all in different spaces, but your phone can be picked up and called. So in my office, we keep it pretty simple. I have long ago given up on an hour of power, because I know realtors, y'all never going to do an hour of nothing, because you just get too distracted and you like to multitask and you have ADD, frankly, and so it's just not going to happen. So in my office, our goal is 1 phone call a day. And who are our targets? It's the people in our phones. And we make our 1 phone call at 8 a.m. We all check in by Slack on our team accountability thing and say, you make your phone call. Are you good? Are you good? Because you got to support each other in this. And I'll tell you that the phone calls I made 60 days ago lasted for 3 minutes. Now they all last 20 minutes because everybody's anxious to talk to somebody they're not related to or living with. And so when you start calling people, you're going to start really doing what we were talking about earlier, and we'll keep talking about, is build relationship before you make an ask. That's what pick up the phone is about. Build relationship before you make an ask. Because y'all, if you build a relationship now, the ask is so easy in the future. And I'll remind you that as you're making yourself do these daily phone calls and you're growing in that space, we're in a time now where perfection has been let go. Amen and hallelujah for that. This is my favorite of the viral Zoom videos. If y'all haven't seen this one, it's freaking hilarious. And she's either speaking Spanish or Portuguese. I don't know either language, so I'm guessing, but she's got her makeup on, her hair fixed, and she's doing a presentation. And then husband or boyfriend or whatever appears behind her with only his underpants on. And she never stops talking, but she does this. She puts up that mom Heisman arm like twice at him. He realizes he's on camera and starts bouncing off the walls, and it's hilarious because she never misses a beat. So if she's not a realtor, she totally needs to become one, because she'd be great because she's not distracted. But then after she finishes her presentation and he's done like laying in the floor bouncing, she was like, oh, like she like at the end of it. And it's just a reminder that right now, you actually don't have to be perfect because nobody is. You're going to be given grace because people are all in a similar weird space right now. So take advantage of that. This is when you try new things, you try to make your videos, and you try getting out there a little more than you have in the past, because why not? Other people are going to give you that space to do it, and you want to get over yourself. Now's the time to do it. And so y'all should really have no excuse for not making real estate videos now. So those of y'all that are thinking, all right, Lee, I got it. I'm going to be better at talking to low credit score buyers. I'm going to make my daily phone call. What else you got? Okay, here's what else I got. I want you to think about how in your life, you've got things that you don't want to do that you know you should do, things that you don't like to do, and you'd have to be vulnerable enough to admit it. In a social media world, we're not generally very vulnerable. We're typically trying to be our most perfect selves. And that's nothing anybody can identify with. Well, this is inside my run group, so it's no secret to many of you, I'm a runner, and I started running in 2012 because I was far overweight, and I didn't want to be that way and didn't want to set that example, and so I made a lot of choices. And then I got rid of all my too big clothes. I couldn't be tempted to go back into them. Well, part of what keeps me running is I have a run group of friends who, when we set a start time, if you're not there, they will bust your chops without any regrets at all. And so you show up. Well, when this whole mess went down, we weren't able to have our large group runs. And so now if I'm running, it's just like 3 or 4 people. So nobody's, in super duper proximity. And obviously the ones who are super wigged out are solo running right now, which is cool. We'll see them again soon. But inside our group, of course, you have people like Darius, who was perfect because he's a trainer and he's always fit and he's always cheerful and he's always your favorite person to see, because you'll be in a bad mood, but you won't be in a bad mood for 25 seconds after he opens his mouth. And so, of course, when we had to stop our group runs, Darius is like, okay, we're going to do a push-up challenge, and it's for 30 days, and we're going to add a push-up a day. And we're all like, maybe you are, because you're Mr. Trainer. And look at him. He's on asphalt with his fist down doing his full body push-ups. And we're all like, that ain't gonna happen, because he's like the muscle man, right? So he's way over here and the rest of us are down here. And so when you're down here and he's over here, you're like, I'll watch you because it's fun to watch, but ain't happening. It's not gonna happen, right? And so we say somebody's so far away from us, there's just no point in trying to attain it. Well, what happened is we were all watching and whatever, we weren't gonna do it. Lainey in the middle signed up. And we were all like, that's our Lainey. Wait, what? Because Lainey is in our run group and she's a run walker. She ain't going to go fast, don't want to go fast. We all start together. She does her pace. We all end together. We do shots at the end of our races because we're a very fun run group. And Lainey ain't doing upper body. She ain't stretching. She ain't doing nothing. Well, she signed up. And every one of us said, if Lainey's going to do it, we have to do it. And so because she said she was going to be vulnerable and needed something else to do, because she teaches special needs children and she doesn't have access to the work that she knows is desperately needed right now in this shutdown environment. There are some really vulnerable pieces of our population. Lainey stresses out every day that she can't help her kids because they're in home situations that you and I are fortunate enough not to be in. And so for her to manage her stress, she decided to do this damn push-up challenge. And so all of a sudden my text thread is full of, we're going to do the push-up and plank challenge. And all of us are like, well, if Lainey's going to, we have to. And we all signed up. So I'll just remind you that no matter where you are in life and what you do and what your hangups are, somebody's watching you and they think you're great. And when you do something that stretches a little bit, you might actually bring them with you because they want to support you, and they too have vulnerabilities. They too want to get better and they're scared. And so Darius only attracted in a couple of people because he's way up here, but Lainey's right here with the rest of us. And when she signs up, everybody jumped in, including Peter, who's one of our candidates for Stanley County Commission. And Peter, you saw his little hashtag first upper body workout in forever because Lainey did. And so for some of y'all, you don't want to exercise. I get it. You're like, if I'm running and something's chasing me, okay, so challenge yourself to walk to the end of the driveway twice. Tag 2 friends and say, I don't want to work out, but I'm going to walk to the end of the driveway. And so I'm going to tag 2 friends that need to do it too. You'll be surprised how many people will say, I know I need to move, but I can't run a marathon, because for too many of us, we only set really impossible goals that are not going to happen when in reality, if we were vulnerable enough to say we'll start small, people will come with us. And starting small is what it looked like at the beginning of the pandemic, when so many people were doing these sidewalk art challenges, which, by the way, if you didn't know, you just use painter's tape to make the edges. That's how it looks all cool. But I still couldn't have done it because I can't draw a straight line with painter's tape. I'd be the one writing the words up at the top or drawing that M bird. Y'all remember drawing the M bird? It was basically a seagull. That's the only bird I could ever draw. And so I could tell you that that's not my skill, but I got a daughter with that skill. And could you now, we're 8 weeks in or 9 weeks, however many weeks it is that we've all lost track of, could you do Sidewalk 2.0 or Sidewalk 3.0 and go elevate again? Go to a 55 plus community that probably didn't have little ones in there to brighten their day, and go brighten it up. Because as we reopen our economy and people are still in these really weird divided spaces, it's just that one positive person in the middle who's willing to say, I'm vulnerable enough to say, I'm going to color something because I need it, not for you, that can change things. And who's that somebody? It's a realtor. I'll tell you, when I was doing this class with Long Island realtors, a realtor anonymous piped up and said that he had done something. I said, what did you do? And he said, I took my kids out and we washed the stop signs in the community. And I said, tell me about that. He said, well, I was looking for something to do and we figured nobody'd ever washed the stop signs. So we took some Windex and went out and washed them. So he went out with his daughters and they Windexed the stop signs in their community. And a neighbor pulled up and said, what y'all doing? And he said, we're washing the stop signs because we needed something to do out of the house. And the neighbor was like, cool, and went on home. And so then because he's not doing this whole, well, I'm a realtor and this is what realtors do, because you don't always have to do that, right? Because people will look you up and they will find you. So he goes to the next door group and says, how cool is this? One of our neighbors was out cleaning stop signs. You know, how wonderful of a place this is to live, because that's who realtors are. You're the one who makes something a little bit better in some way that might be as innocuous as Windex in a stop sign. It could also be in the way that you're educating people to make things accessible. So just like you might be the one who works out by walking to the end of the driveway and back, Dr. Jerome Adams, who is our Surgeon General of the US, and he's seriously the most handsome Surgeon General we've ever had, on Palm Sunday, this was on his Twitter account, he made a little video of how to make a mask. And I needed it because I have a sewing machine and I know how to sew. And I ain't making a mask because I have these little friends over here that are like, I just made 500 masks in 5 minutes. So I'm going to go donate it to all the poor firefighters or whatever. And I'm like, shut up, Pinterest perfect, Karen. You're making us all look bad over here. And I don't want to make a mask. Well, Dr. Adams had his little video in like 30 seconds. He takes a t-shirt and his fold and 2 elastic rubber bands, and shazam, he's got a mask. And I was like, thank you, that I can do. And I'll tell you, in a lot of your ways in life, there's just that something that you do. Show somebody your tips, show them your tricks, be accessible, make their lives easier. That's what we do as realtors. We find hard things and we make it doable because we are professional problem solvers. And I didn't really leave y'all any time for questions, but y'all haven't been chatting over here. So I'm just going to assume you don't have any unless you type it in right now. Go to your chat block and add in your questions. If you've got something you need to ask of me, I'll remind you again. I've reminded you before, and I know you've been reminded over and over from the association. Go to this site. NAR has spent a ton of money making sure that we as members have tools that can make us better through this pandemic and beyond. NAR.realtor/RTRN. That's right tools right now. ePro is free. At Home with Diversity is half price. And by the way, the new content rolled out last week. And we were going to have 100 students in DC on the new At Home with Diversity. But we had over 1,200 because it was virtual. So that's definitely a win for virtual education that we have that many more realtors with that certification. And it's a good class. And you've got the pricing specialist. You've got commitment to excellence you can do. And that counts for your ethics requirement now. And you've got financial wellness. You've also got the 2 free months of telehealth. Don't forget that the deadline to sign up for telehealth is May 31st to get those 2 free months. You can extend it for $7 a month. It does include mental health. It includes mental health, and it includes your 26-year-old and under children. If you want my free stuff, it's all right there at the word kicktail to the number 555-888, or go to learnwithlee.com. Just download everything I have. Some is related to this webinar series, most is not, but I just keep everything in one place because I do. If you have a story about your life as a realtor, you want to be on my podcast, message me. It's called Crazy Shit in Real Estate. And it's a thinly veiled play on how professional realtors survive through all kinds of unexpected scenarios. And I freaking love my podcast because it's my passion project. We have so much fun. So if you want to be on my podcast, send me a note. I love nothing more than showcasing realtors that don't think they're very famous and don't think they have anything special to share, because you guys have so many things that you've done that are great and fun, uplifting, funny, sad, and scary. And realtor life is just really amazing space to be in. So thank you for having me for 3 weeks. I hope this has been worth your time. I hope that you will thank your volunteer leaders for leading in an oddball time, that you will especially thank your staff for not quitting, because we are challenging people to take care of, and we know that it's hard, but hopefully the members make it rewarding. So say thank you once in a while, friends. And I do hope to be at Triple Play, so we'll see how that works out. I know that Massachusetts Realtors is proceeding with their event as of right now, so my hope is that Triple Play holds together, because frankly, I mean, what's one more virus in Atlantic City? Am I right? Am I right? And so anyway, let's see. I don't see any questions over here. Y'all are just generally putting happy things in the chat block. I do love y'all. You're amazing. Please, 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 I've said it before, reach out to another member in this association. Check on them. Make sure they're okay. Let them vent if they need to vent. And then provide the link back to the association website, because y'all, not all members have any idea that their association is more than the place that cashes their dues check. Make sure they know about the tools from NAR, because the members who are disconnected are probably the ones that need our resources the most right now. So just reach out beyond yourself. Don't turn it into a recruiting thing. Okay, this ain't recruiting. This is humanity. So just be the best realtor you can right now, so that as your job is loosened back up and you can go sell houses again, it'll be a better version of you selling houses, and our communities will view us differently. So thanks for having me.